Welcome to the European Forum for Urban Security's SecU4All podcast. SecU4All aims to empower local and regional authorities to ensure the security of soft targets in public spaces against potential threats. In each of these episodes, experts from our consortium join to explore a different aspect of making and keeping public spaces open, accessible and safe for everyone. So far, our episodes have stressed general principles for securing public spaces, but in all conversations, adaptation and flexibility were the key words. These principles can only work if you make them fit the conditions on the ground. One reason this is very easy to call for in a podcast intro and very hard to do in practice is that cities are constantly changing, sometimes rapidly and sometimes radically, with one of the biggest drivers of that change being technological innovation. So today's episode is about the role that technology plays in the security of public spaces and the kind of mindset that can help us use it in an ethical way. Joining me for this are Francisco Javier Castro, assistant professor and researcher at the Crimina Research Center for the Study and Prevention of Crime, as well as Maguelone, Laval, and Giacomo Bianchi, both project officers at the European Organization for Security, EOS. Welcome one and all. Before we start, could you tell us a little more about your work and your interest in this project?
Good morning. This is Giacomo Bianchi. I'm project officer at EOS. We are based in Brussels and we are the voice of the European security industry and the research community. We operate in 15 different countries and our members provide the security research solutions and services across many security domains, for example, including border, cybersecurity, transport, and the crisis management. We decided to join the SecU4All consortium at the beginning of the project since we have already met IFUs from previous Horizon 2020 projects. So for this reason, we are working on specific themes such as the protection of public spaces and the soft targets. And we are trying to put together with the training all these themes that the project is touching.
Maguelone?
Thank you. So my name is Maguelone Laval. I'm from France and I work along with Giacomo at EOS as a junior policy and project officer. So at EOS, we work alongside working groups. And so one of our working groups is the STCIP ones, so for soft target and critical infrastructure protection. So I'm in charge of that working group. That's how we work. And we have actually a lot of synergies between this kind of topic that we discuss in the working group and SecU4All.
Thank you. Francisco?
I'm Francisco Javier Castro. I am involved in the Crimina Research Center for the Study and Prevention of Crime. This is a research center belonging to the University Miguel Hernández of Elche in Alicante, Spain. Crimina is a research center dedicated to the study and the prevention of crime, just from a very modern perspective, especially from environmental situational crime prevention. But in the case of SecU4All, we are mainly involved in everything related with the privacy, with the legal and with the ethical issues. So when we had the first conversation with your colleagues from EFUS, we was delighted to be on board, mainly because we are also people who are involved in the training of practitioners. So this is a good opportunity to see how this kind of experience are developing in other countries. So it was a good opportunity to exchange good practices, success, experience in training, and to meet another institution related with the urban safety.
Which is such a nice setup for the first question. Thank you very much for that, because cooperation and teamwork tend to require a shared understanding or a working definition of the topic. Let's start with that, because depending on whom you ask, technology can be anything from sci-fi gadgets to brick walls. So in the context of SecU4All, what does technology even mean?
If I should start with a strict definition, it's a very broad definition and encompasses a lot of things. A technology is basically the application of scientific knowledge to the practical aims of human environments. So we have a very broad definition that refers to something that is uncountable, so technology. And we have, on the other hand, what we call a technology, so a project that is designed with technology. So a technology is often put in opposition with nature and especially primary tools. But we also have this idea of novelty in the common language. So in that respect, technology would be very close to innovation. So something new, something that changes things. So when this is applied to public safety, technologies enable law enforcement agencies and municipalities in their day-to-day duties. So technologies can relieve officers from their duties. So for instance, a CCTV software, they can allow police officers to spend less time in control rooms and more time investigating or on the ground. They can also do things that are not possible for humans. For instance, the drones, they can be sent to monitor the evolution of a wildfire, for instance. So a drone can be seen as a technology, definitely. And you mentioned a wall. So to a certain extent, we could say that a wall is a technology, actually, because it is used to relieve humans from a task, protecting their house, preventing floods, and so on. But if we apply this innovative criterion that I just mentioned before, it does not work so much anymore.
Yeah, I would like to add something, especially from the ethical perspective, of the normative perspective, is that technology is not value neutral, independently of good use or bad use. And this is something that it is important to show to citizens and to train practitioners. We have to consider technology as a value-laden artifact. I mean, we have to involve some perspective about what kind of objectives, what kind of bias, what kind of ideology are behind the use or a concrete use of the different technologies. And this is one of the points that is involved in the Module 4 of the Secure for All. This is a balance between the use of technologies and the reflection about the values behind the use of technologies.
I completely agree. I just wanted to be a little bit more focused on the context of technology in Secure for All project, because we are discussing, we are mentioning a lot of technologies that, of course, can improve the security and the safety for citizens and the different infrastructures. But at the same time, we have to take in consideration even the human aspect that we are facing in our daily routine. Because, I mean, technology can improve, of course, our security, our way of living a safe life. But at the same time, Secure for All, from my perspective, can improve the positive perception of people in regards to the technology. Because sometimes, even in our experience, we are finding a few problems to explain these new challenges that we are facing in the last times.
Okay, so this doesn't really sound like a particularly easy starting position. Technology changes people's lives. Technology isn't neutral. People aren't necessarily neutral towards technology. Based on that, what is the case you make for using technology for the security of public spaces? What are the benefits? How do you improve these perceptions you just mentioned, Giacomo?
Of course, there are concrete and specific benefits that technologies in a large definition can bring to the population and to, of course, the public space. So first of all, we have to start from the assumption that technology can help to make public spaces safer than without technologies. Of course, new developed technologies and, of course, their performance are real. So it's something that we can see, and we can see that there's a huge improvement from before. Of course, this development and even the deployment of the new technologies must be done in collaboration with the local authorities or by an organization that will use these new technologies. And this adoption must always be in response of a real need and can be even confirmed by a local security audit, for example. So the point is that new technology has an important, a crucial role, but at the same time, so we should always keep in mind the role of the citizens, because sometimes it's even, as I was saying before, a new technology can cause different reactions in the population, in the citizens. So it's always a good point that local authorities should help the population in order to understand why these new technologies are setting there.
Francisco?
We have to think not only in terms of, the collaboration between different actors. This is quite important, but there is many other positive social impacts that could be associated with benefits of the use of technologies. For example, regarding the citizen participation, I mean, when we are thinking in the design of technologies, it is important the involvement of all the actors, even the participation of citizens. Why the citizen participation? Because it is totally linked with the legitimacy of the authorities. If people don't feel like they are reflected in the design of a technology, the authorities are not going to be legitimate. Another issue is related with the crime rates, with how to guarantee a higher compliance with the law from the citizens. For example, the idea of the reduction of the perception of insecurity. All of this could be related with the use of technologies, but at the same time, we have to make efforts to guarantee this, because at some point, the use of some technologies, instead of providing like a feeling of security, provoke the contrary, a feeling of insecurity. If you only see, for example, cameras in the street, maybe you are thinking, okay, something bad happens, or this neighborhood is not secure, or something like this. So the idea is we have to put into the design of these technologies all of these issues just to guarantee this positive social impact.
Maguelone, you said during the definition that innovative technologies can make the life of officers or authorities easier. Is it difficult to make them aware of that?
So basically, technologies exist, but we don't often see them on the ground. And so that's why communication is the key. You need really to interact with the authorities. Practitioners should be properly aware of what is available for them and how to use it. And so sometimes there is this gap between what is on the market and what we can see on the ground. And it's also the purpose of this kind of trainings, allowing practitioners to be aware of what is available for them. I mean, it depends on the country, because for some industries, they might be present in a country and not in another one. And so, convincing someone of the real benefits of a technology can be sometimes quite challenging for industries. You know, in some countries, they have this very different way, even at the local level, to deal with public safety. So I know, for instance, that CCTVs in France, it's not implemented in the same way. Some cities are very equipped with that, and some other they decided to choose another option. That's something that we noticed.
I fully agree with the importance of communication. Maybe communication have to involve another issues. For example, that technologies could be a way to guarantee fundamental rights and civil liberties of people. Could be that some technologies, CCTVs, facial recognition, whatever, are totally in line, for example, with the legality, with the necessity and the proportionality to address some important issues for the public safety. Not only from a technical perspective, but with another level of values of citizens regarding their rights, their moral needs, their legal needs, for example.
I completely agree, especially about the communication that has a crucial role about the relation between fundamental rights and the privacy violations. Of course, we are not at the beginning of this path, but just a few years ago, we started to ask about the relation between the fundamental rights and the privacy violations. And the communication in this case can have an important role. This is the topic of the future about security, in my opinion. So this is the future challenge that we have to face, and we need to establish even an efficient and a good communication in order to explain in details which is the final objective. About the fundamental rights, I totally agree, because sometimes this monitoring equipment, these video cameras, these new technologies can create problems to the citizens, and I completely agree about that. So we have to try to put our effort in the prevention of the security. So maybe split these two words, the public, the social one, and the technological one about the security, and try to find the common points in both of them.
Before we talk about the ethical problems, let's briefly talk about the practical challenges. So let's say the communication was successful. You have convinced the authorities of the need for a new technology. They have acquired it. What needs to happen then? How do you get these solutions out of the box and into productive daily practice? And what can go wrong there?
I think that we need a couple of days in order to discuss about it.
For sure. Yeah.
At least. No, in my opinion, as you said, now we are talking about, local authorities or organizations that have an impact to the social aspects. Of course, local authorities, when they decide to adopt a new technology, they face several challenges. The first one is an initial training that they have to establish, because they need to have all the staff able to use the new technology that they are adapting. And this initial training is requested and necessary. So we cannot provide new technologies without an initial training. And of course, a good training requires a lot of time, especially in such situation in which mistakes cannot be made. In the sense, when we are talking about public spaces, such as, the main square of cities, train stations, airports. So in that case, we have to limit as much as possible mistakes. Because, of course, there's the human factor, the human presence, and there can be a huge problem. In order to reach this full potential of the new technology, this technology must be integrated into the organization, of course, and has to be part of the processes and the systems that local authorities or other organizations are using. So simply buying new technology is not enough, and can be even deleterious for the local authorities or for, in this case, even for an organization. Indeed, the staff has to be trained in order even to explain to the citizens things if they don't work or if they work, and why yes and why not. So this is, in my opinion, the first challenge that local authorities and organizations have to face in order to guarantee security and a good explanation to the citizens.
If I may add up to this, actually, police officers, municipalities, but especially LIAs, they are continuously trained. It's not like they reach middle age and they don't have anything else to learn. They learn about new law enforcement techniques, things like that. So actually, I believe that trainings to the use of new technologies can be easily added to this continuous process of training that officers have.
Yeah, if I made something, it's that the development of technologies goes faster than the reflection about the potential uses and the limits of the uses. So this is not an issue just to stigmatize technologies, but the potential misuse. Okay, and I'm pretty happy to know that in the case of EOS, when they are effective and their uses, they provide training. This is very important just to know the scope of the use of technologies. But at the same time, I think, and this is one point that Secure for All covered in a very good way in the seminars and in the workshop. This is about how to provide normative competencies about the potential uses in terms of their limits, their potential affection to other kind of dimensions, and so on. The normative training is fundamental to know when we are using in the best way some technologies, especially, and this is quite important to point it out, is that we are talking about technologies or innovative technologies for urban security. We are not talking about the mobile phone, because a mobile phone could be like a very general technologies spread by all the people. But in the case of CCTVs, artificial intelligence, facial recognition, we are discussing like a very sensitive technologies. So in that case, we have to be more cautious when we are dealing with this.
Let's talk about these normative problems a little more. Why are you stressing normative competences in your trainings? How can they help us deal with those problems in a better way?
It's like we know that the use of innovative technologies, drones, CCTVs, biometric sensors, while it is true that their use is becoming increasingly common, and this is something that we are seeing not only in Secure for All, but in other European projects. So it is also increasing their legal, their social, their ethical issues too. Due to the enormous conceptual and technical complexity of these topics, there is a significant risk of non-democratic uses of the technologies dedicated to human safety. So some potential risks are currently discussed in the main literature, in the main reports, is basically related with the affection to the autonomy of people, the affection to the liberty to movement, liberty to the freedom of speech, for example, the privacy, mainly the privacy. This is quite curious because we mainly think that privacy is the unique ethical issues arising with technologies, but it isn't. Because we have, for example, another kind of potential ethical risk, for example, discrimination, the potential, for example, affection to the general welfare. So we have to pay attention to how each of the technologies affect to this dimension. For example, one of the most current issues regarding the potential harm associated with the bias in the automated tools, in the automated technologies, especially those related with artificial intelligence. I'm not going to talk about the scope of the bias, but only to say that when a local authority pretends to use a technology based in an artificial intelligence architecture, they have to take into consideration the potential harm related with bias regarding the gender, the race, the socioeconomical position, and so on. So what to do? And this is maybe one of the points that we would like to highlight in the project is what I said before, how to provide normative competencies in 4 or 5 main topics that all the practitioners and of course the citizens have to take into consideration. For example, yes, this is a very philosophical question, but this is important that the local authorities have this in mind to make the question about what are we doing when we are using a technology? What are we doing when we are using CCTVs? Or what are we doing when we want to use facial recognition? Use of technology is not only related with the technical part, it is already related with how to understand the social, the ethical, the legal impact of the use of technologies. It doesn't mean that suddenly all the people have to know the whole regulation about something. It means that you have to know that these technologies are associated with some important issues regarding the privacy, regarding discrimination, regarding other issues. It's important also to know, and this is more ethical issues, regarding the cultural awareness and the expression about the particularities that each cities or each country has regarding a concrete use. For example, it is not the same to deploy a facial recognition technology in Spain than, for example, in France or, for example, in Belgium or in Italy, whatever. Because it maybe in Italy and Spain, because we are very quite similar, it could be possible. But in the case of practitioner, all the local authorities has to take into consideration that maybe in their cities, in their countries, the moral needs, the legal needs are different, and the perception of people could be different from another's. So
I agree about the fundamental rights and the idea to implement the normative about security and let's call even the social security, because it will have, in my opinion, an important role. Of course, we are talking about an ocean of things, of information, and even different challenges that we can face in the next years. I remember that even a few years ago, we were already talking about the problems between the privacy of citizens and the adoption of new solutions, technological solutions. So we can have different approaches about this aspect. One can be that the end can justify the means. So if my objective, my goal is the safety, so I don't care about privacy. And I disagree about this kind of approach, let's say. Otherwise, we can find a kind of solution. I have a few examples. So now I think that anyone would like to fly without security checks before taking a flight, because population identified that taking a flight can be a problem for the security. The same if we want to go to a festival or to a concert. So I think that no one wants not to be checked before the entrance, because we identified that place that can be closed or open as a potential risk for the personal security. So I don't want to say that we have to to experience a kind of insecurity situation in order to accept new technologies, because of course it's not true that all the technologies can have a good impact to the population. So we have just to understand which is the best way that we need to take in order to find this balance, because at the end is a balance. And of course, it's just my personal opinion, we need to address our efforts to the prevention of these potential risks that we can run in our daily life. Of course, we are always at the beginning of a new process. We will have different challenges in the next years, but the idea of finding a balance, and it's not easy, of course, can be the best solution that I can see at the moment.
So if I can add up to this, just as Giacomo just mentioned, I think it is question about perception, actually, because, for instance, CCTVs, that can be interpreted as an invasion of privacy. But for instance, for some people, they feel way safer when they are in a space with a camera. For instance, it's night, you are in the subway and you are alone. You would rather have like a CCTV camera and you feel safer in this way. But it's a perception. Again, some people might disagree with me. It's something that I wanted to point at. Another thing, again, but it's about the communication between authorities that are using these technologies and the citizens. And basically, for instance, if we take again CCTVs, in London, this is one of the cities that is the most equipped with CCTVs. So the local police, the Metropolitan Police, they made this campaign about being transparent about the use of CCTV, facial recognitions, things like that, why we use it, what we would do with your data and things like that.
I know that we've barely even scratched the surface on these issues here, and Giacomo said that we'd need days. But since you just brought up London as a case study, Maguelone, where can the listeners who want to dive a little deeper into the role of technology in urban security and the related problems find more examples and additional information?
Actually, the EFUS platform is a very good platform, I believe. And this platform, they have a lot of information about technology, and it takes all aspects, including ethical aspects of these new technologies. So I believe it's a very valuable platform. And I invite people, all over Europe to check on their national forums as well, if they want content maybe in their language. And obviously, I would also invite people to connect to our website and check what we do. And if they want to interact about what our members can propose, we are always available.
Giacomo?
Yes, I agree, of course, with Maguelone about our website and about the EFUS platform. I can even recommend one Horizon 2020 project in which EOS is working on. It's called the RISPOC, just started on September 2021. Is one of those kind of projects that are putting as a central point the relation between new technologies, risk situations, and citizens. So it's a little bit the recap of what we discussed today.
Francisco?
Yeah, I have notes of European projects. They are basically dedicated to the legal and ethical implication of the use of technologies. You know, the names of the projects in European project, Sherpa, Satori, Eneri, in which the researchers have dedicated many efforts to outline the ethical and the legal framework of the using of technologies and provide some assessment tool for doing this. This is not only for practitioners, for everyone. And the Alan Turing Institute dedicated many efforts to develop guidelines and reports and other kind of documents dedicated to the potential risk of artificial intelligence technologies and so on. So this would be my recommendation.
We'll link to all of those in the description. Thank you so much to the three of you. This really isn't the easiest topic to provide quick introductions to, but you made it seem effortless, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for joining us. For additional information on our partners' work in the Secu4All project, please follow the links in the description. Secu4All is funded by the European Union's Internal Security Fund and coordinated by EFUS, the European Forum for Urban Security. You can find us online at efus.eu or on Twitter under @EFUSnews, that's @EFUSNEWS. This episode was produced and recorded by me, Lauren Schätzle, for the German European Forum for Urban Security, with the kind support of the Secu4All project team at EFUS.